In this video, we're going to create the chair that the can is sitting in. I've started by creating this polygon, and now I'm going to put a bevel on the edges to maintain the squareness of it. With the selection, I'll go up to Edit Mesh, and I'll choose Bevel, and I'll go to the Attributes. In the Attributes, I'm going to choose 2 segments. I've got the width set for 0.3. I don't know if that's what I want, so I'll leave the Bevel option window up and click Apply. That actually works pretty well, so I'm going to leave it as it is. Now we need 4 more of these to construct that basic chair. So I'll hit Command D, pulling up another one for the cushion there, and then I'll duplicate one on either side for the arms, and then I'm going to rotate them on the right axes here. With the basic polygons created, I'm going to get my edge loop tool, and I'll start to customize the back of the chair. I'll drop a line in the middle, and then maybe I'll put one here, and then I'll start to scale just those areas where I'd like it to be a little bit different. So it's pretty subjective at this point, till I have something like that. Next, we'll use polygon cylinders to create the little legs that go on the bottom of the chair. I've tapered the bottom so it looks like a piece of wood, and now I'm going to place one in each corner of the chair using the top view. I'll group it, and then in my orthographic front view I'll go and place it on the grid. And before we would go in and distort it using the nonlinear bend tools, we will define the UV map so that once we do distort, the texture remains consistent and undistorted with the geometry. I'll begin with everything selected in the chair. I'll right-click and choose Assign New Material, Arnold AI Standard Surface. Be sure to name your material. And with everything selected, I'll delete the history and freeze the transforms. Now I'll go piece by piece, selecting it, and I will go to UVs, and I'm going to choose Automatic. And that'll be applied to each one. Just want to be careful that once you do apply it, 2 things. Each time we apply it to the piece, it'll be on top of the one that's still there. So it's a good idea to select all the shells as you do it and pull them outside that quadrant that Photoshop sees. So I'm going to do that to each of them, pulling them outside, and then I'll collectively put them in and scale them. I've UV mapped all my geometry. Now I'm going to put everything in the center here. Now the pattern is going to be consistent for each one, so I'm going to scale them collectively once I stack them. Up here are the 4 legs that I've selected and pulled out as well. We're not going to do any kind of mapping on that because it's going to be a solid color. I'll start by right-clicking and choosing UV Shell, and I'll take each one and drag it into the center on top of one another. I'll marquee select all of them, and with the scale tool I'll make it a bit smaller. And because the legs are a solid color, I'll select them all, I'll scale them down quite a bit, and then I'll move them into that quadrant. I'm going to make sure everything's back in the object mode so that I can generate the UV map. I'm shift selecting or marquee selecting. I would never click up and go to the group because we get an error message if we try to generate the UV map with the group selected. I'll go to Image, UV Snapshot, I browse to my project folder, apply and close, and the next step would be to go and make the texture. In Photoshop, I created this texture on the left and copy and paste it into the UV map on the right. Now I'll just go in and add another layer to put where I'd like the brown of the leg to be. I'll save it with the UV map turned off, and now I'll return to Maya and we'll apply that. I'll select one of the elements of the model, right-click and choose Material Attributes, and I'll go to the Base tab, clicking on the checkerboard, File, Image Name, I'll click on the folder. I'll hit 6 on the keyboard to see what the texture looks like. The last step was to introduce the nonlinear bend tools, and it could be done under the form, nonlinear. I'll choose bend. I can do it on individual pieces, or I can do it on the collective chair. I'll hit 4 on the keyboard so I can see the function. And if I were to hit T, I can now edit that by dragging in the center. Now, depending on how I want the chair to bend, if I wanted to, I could rotate it, put it in the direction that I might want. It's a good idea to introduce it first and then do all that. Now, I think I'm going to, in the context of this chair back, I'll select it, and I'm going to go to Mesh, and I'm just going to smooth it once. And that's going to give me more to work with. So I'll introduce my nonlinear bend now, hitting 4 on the keyboard, and then T. I'll drag back to give it a bend. I don't want the bend on the bottom, so if I go down to the bottom blue diamond and click on that and drag it up, it eliminates the bend at the bottom of the chair, and I can isolate it to the top now if I wanted. Now, it's a good idea sometimes to replicate these elements as you do it, because what happens is I'll hit Command D. I would have to delete the history. If I did that, it would be a permanent bend. If I simply duplicate it, the duplicate has got that function baked in. Now that I've got this bent the way I want, if I wanted to now, I could get the whole group by hitting the up arrow, and I can add the same functions to the whole group. So if I were to go to Deform again, in this instance, I'll choose Flare, and that's going to give me the opportunity to distort the top or the bottom, or both. It'd be easier to do this in the composition with the can itself so that you have the distortion exactly the way you want. I'll select the whole group. I'll hit Command D, and that means that these elements are now permanently distorted.